Welcome to ZenEnergy, a space for clarity, compassion, and meaningful orientation. ZenEnergy organization is a nonprofit created to help people pause, listen inward, and return to one steady point. These reflections are offered as a moment of steadiness, a little more room to breathe, and one honest next step. Today's reflection is called The Kindness of a Clear Boundary. This reflection brings our opening clarity and compassion sequence into practice. In the previous reflections, we look at clarity as a form of care and compassion as clear seeing. These are not ideas we leave behind. They become the ground. What changes today is the form. Today, we look at how clarity and compassion become livable through the boundary. Because a boundary is one of the ways care takes shape without becoming confused. A boundary is often misunderstood as a wall, something hard, something rejecting, something defensive, something that closes the heart. But a clear boundary is not always a wall. Sometimes it is more like a doorway with a frame. It tells us where contact can happen without distortion. It tells us what can be held, what cannot be held in the same way anymore. It tells us what kind of relationship, conversation, work, or offering is possible without asking the body, the heart, or the life to live inside confusion. A boundary does not have to be unkind. A clear boundary can be one of the ways care becomes sustainable. Many people wait too long to name a boundary. They wait until they are exhausted. They wait until the body has been speaking for months. They wait until a small, honest sentence has become anger, distance, collapse, or disappearance. But the problem was not the boundary. The problem was that the boundary arrived so late that it had to carry too much. When a limit is not named, the body and the heart often begin to name it for us. Tension, irritation, withdrawal, resentment, a heaviness before the conversation even begins. Resentment can be a signal that something has gone unnamed for too long, but resentment is rarely as precise as clarity. It speaks from pain before steadiness has returned. A clear boundary named earlier can be simpler. It does not need to explain every wound. It does not need to hold the whole history. It can just tell the truth about what is possible now. A clear boundary does not need to attack. It does not need to punish. It does not need to turn another person into a villain. It does not need to become dramatic in order to be valid. Sometimes a boundary is very plain. I cannot do this. I need more clarity before I continue. I'm not available for this kind of exchange. I can help in this way, but not in that way. I need to pause. I need to protect this time. I need to stop participating in what keeps me unclear. These sentences may feel small, but a small, truthful sentence can restore a great deal of inner order. A boundary becomes necessary when care begins to lose its shape. We may notice that we keep explaining the same thing again and again. We may notice the body tightening before a message, a call, a meeting, or a request. We may say yes, but feel heavy afterwards. We may keep hoping for something that has not been shown. We may keep the surface peaceful while the inner life becomes crowded. Or we may feel ourselves becoming smaller, quieter, more available, or more confused than we can honestly be. These are signals. They are not always final conclusion. They do not always mean a relationship must end. They do not always mean someone is wrong, but they do mean something needs form. Something needs to be named clearly enough that care is no longer asked to survive inside vagueness. In ZenEnergy, a boundary is not treated as the opposite of compassion. A clear boundary often appears when clarity and compassion are finally allowed to stand together. Clarity helps us see what is true. Compassion helps us respond with a humane heart. A boundary gives that understanding a form. Without boundaries, care can become overextension. Patience can become suppression. Loyalty can become entrapment. Kindness can become a place where truth is not allowed to breathe. A clear boundary protects compassion from distortion. It helps care remain honest. It helps generosity remain clean. It helps connection remain possible without requiring self-abandonment. It allows care to return to its right size. This is especially important when we feel responsible for keeping everything together. We may believe that if we stop accommodating, something will fall apart. We may believe that if we name a limit, we're failing at love. We may believe that if someone is disappointed, we have done something wrong. But disappointment is not always evidence of harm. Sometimes disappointment simply means reality has been named. Someone may be disappointed because they wanted more access than we can give. Someone may be disappointed because the old arrangement was easier for them. Someone may be disappointed because our silence made things more convenient. This does not mean we become careless with another person's feeling. It means another person's disappointment cannot be the only measure of whether a boundary is kind. A boundary can be uncomfortable and still be caring. It can be unwelcome and still be honest. It can change the shape of a relationship and still preserve what is real within it. A clear boundary does not mean the heart has closed. It may mean the heart is no longer willing to be used against itself. It may mean the body is asking for protection. It may mean the work needs structure. It may mean the relationship needs truth. It may mean compassion needs a form strong enough to hold it. This is the kindness of a clear boundary. Not the kindness of pleasing everyone. Not the kindness of disappearing into another person's need. Not the kindness of keeping peace while losing the self. A different kind of kindness. The kindness of saying, here is a shape that allows care to remain real. A boundary can also be an act of respect. It respects another person enough to not pretend. It respects the relationship enough to not let resentment become the hidden language. It respects the body enough to listen before collapse. It respects the work enough to protect the time and attention it requires. It respects reality enough to stop asking confusion to organize the next step. Sometimes we think a boundary is what ends a connection, but sometimes a boundary is what gives connection a chance to become honest. Without a boundary, we may keep giving from fear. We may keep listening while becoming inwardly absent. We may keep saying yes while a quiet no gathers strength inside us. When a boundary is named clearly, everyone has more information. This is what is possible. This is what is not possible. This is what I can offer. This is what I cannot keep carrying. That information may be uncomfortable, but it is also clean. There is often guilt near a boundary. Guilt may appear when we stop overextending. Guilt may appear when we disappoint someone. Guilt may appear when we are no longer willing to be endlessly available. Guilt may say, if you were kind, you would give more. If you were compassionate, you would wait longer. If you were patient, you would understand. If you were loving, you would not need this limit. But guilt is not always wisdom. Sometimes guilt is only the discomfort of changing an old pattern. Sometimes guilt is the echo of a role we are no longer able to perform. Sometimes guilt appears because care is returning to its right size. We can listen to guilt without letting it become the ruler. We can ask, is this guilt pointing to something true? Or is it asking me to abandon what I already know? A clear boundary does not have to be large. It may begin with one sentence. I need time before I answer. I cannot discuss this right now. I'm available for this, but not that. I need clearer information before I can proceed. I am not able to keep revisiting this in the same way. I care, and I also need to protect my capacity. A boundary does not need to explain the whole history of how we arrived here. Sometimes the cleanest boundary names the next step, not the entire wound. It does not have to prove itself. It only has to be true enough to guide action. This is where clarity and compassion meet practice. Clarity asks, what is actually happening here? What has already been shown? What do I know enough to act on? What keeps making me unclear? Compassion asks, how can I respond without hardening? How can I speak without unnecessary harm? How can I honor the humanity in the situation? How can I include myself in the circle of care? And boundary asks, what form does this understanding need? What changes in behavior, access, time, communication, or expectation would allow care to remain clean? So today, the practice is to ask, what boundary would allow care to remain clean? Not what boundary would prove a point. Not what boundary would punish someone. Not what boundary would make me look strong. What boundary would allow care to remain clean? Maybe it's a boundary around time. Maybe it is a boundary around emotional labor. Maybe it is a boundary around work. Maybe it is a boundary around communication. Maybe it is a boundary around what you can keep hoping for without evidence. Maybe it is a boundary around what part of your life can no longer be governed by confusion. The boundary may be small, but if it is true, it can become a place of steadiness. You might begin gently, not by announcing a new identity, not by making a dramatic declaration, not by forcing yourself to become suddenly fearless. Begin by noticing one place where care has lost its shape. One place where yes has become unclear. One place where silence has become heavy. One place where patience has become avoidance. One place where compassion needs a clearer form. Then ask, what is the kindest, truthful shape here? A pause, a sentence, a limit, a request, a smaller offering, a decision to not answer yet, a decision to stop participating in what keeps distorting reality. A clear boundary is not a failure of compassion. It is compassion, learning how to remain real. It is not the loss of warmth. It is warmth guided by clarity. It is not the closing of the heart. It is the heart learning that love, care, and kindness need form in order to last. And from that form, something quieter becomes possible. Less hidden strain, less confusion, less performance, more honesty, more steadiness, more care that does not require disappearance. This is the kindness of a clear boundary. Not because everything becomes easy, but because clarity and compassion finally have a place to stand. Thank you for spending this moment with ZenEnergy. May you leave with a little more clarity, a little more steadiness, and one small next step. To learn more, visit ZenEnergy organization at zenenergyzen.org or explore our Web3 presence at zenenergyorg.eth.limo. If you feel moved to support this work, donations to ZenEnergy organization help sustain our mission and may be tax deductible to the extent allowed by law.